Hello Helmut, hello Gernot.
Hey.
So good to see you, because I wanted to discuss some important topic about the EU Whistleblowing Directive, which is about to become directly applicable now in December this year. And although we still don't have an implementing law yet in Austria, it is nevertheless important for companies because, as I just said, it will be directly applicable. And I get a lot of nervous calls from clients and other companies. And so it's good to discuss this today with you here.
I think it's a quite good opportunity to discuss this topic in this setting because whistleblowing is always a very sensitive and emotional topic within firms and organizations, and I'm looking forward how we can work out a kind of solution to implement such a system.
For example, I often get questions from our clients, why should I bother implementing such a system? Gernot, what do you think about that?
I mean, a lot of international studies says that companies which already have implemented a whistleblowing system or a whistleblowing hotline have less lawsuits normally. And also the cost for lawsuits, if they have some from lawyer perspective, are much lower than in companies which don't have such an instrument in place. On the other hand, such a company is also more attractive to other stakeholders, for example, to investors, because they know that you have a compliance system in place. They're more attractive to potential employees. I think they also have an advantage in a legal court if they can prove that they have a system in place. And so the system helps the company to increase the company value from my point of view.
Yeah, and if I may add, like from a legal perspective, why companies should bother? Well, obviously, it's they have to. You will be obliged to implement it anyway, or at least with more than 50 employees. And what I appreciate about the directive is that it leaves room open for companies to either have like an email or an online tool, for example, an online system.
One thing I forgot to tell you before is that also the responsibility of a manager, of a general manager, or of a board member is a personal one. So those people are also responsible for keeping a clear and a traceable and controllable code of conduct in place. So if they fail, they could be charged personally, or could go to the criminal court or to the civil court at the company, or the state could ask for compensation. So this is a fact which should not be forgotten and underestimated.
Could be an inconvenient situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think like we had already some cases in reality like that. So companies should see it actually as an opportunity, this new law, because they actually get to know then also at first sight what's happening there. You know, before maybe a big scandal happens, like in Siemens, which was also very often reported, and they did not even have a compliance system in place. Yeah?
It's simply the chance, like an insurance, to get the information before it goes to the public or to the prosecutor, and it's the chance to bring things in the right order before something happens outside of the company.
Maybe from a legal perspective as well to mention is that you have now on the one hand an internal reporting channel, but also mandatory and external channel. And so I believe that for companies in this perspective, it is also important to maybe realize that the more attractive you make your internal reporting channel, the less likely employees will resort to the external channel, which is obviously not to the benefit or the intention of the companies. So Helmut, what are the features or what could be the benefits of an online tool which make the handling for reporters, for whistleblowers more easily?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in general, such a system is designed for non-IT guys, of course. Everybody should be able to use it, and therefore it's very easy to use it. But on the other hand, of course, you have to invest a little bit time and of course some efforts to enter a message or such a case. Therefore, it's not comparable to an email, because with an email it could be the case that the email is nothing else that something like a suggestion box. And this is exactly what you do not want to have as a company. And in the reality, we figured out in the meantime, based on our projects, that you can consider one case per year per 1,000 employees of a company. Therefore, you have just only, in reality, maybe not more than one case per year.
So maybe
but these cases are the hardest cases.
Yeah, maybe I can add something. So a huge multinational firm has, I would say, 20 cases a year. They are in the system, and about 80% of those cases are really, really interesting to the management of the firm. Really heavy stuff which has to be treated by the management and by the supervisory board of those companies. The question is now where to start. Who are the stakeholders in such a process, in such a whistleblowing implementation project?
Yeah, very good point. I guess there are, the first thing I would think about is, of course, the employees. It's very important to have them on board as well, to make them feel safe. In Austria, the culture is more that already a lot of even state institutions introduce whistleblower systems, and people are more likely to report, whereas in Bulgaria, for example, people are less likely, employees are less likely to report because they're anxious. And even less, I believe, in Poland, only like 1/3 of employees are willing to report because they're feeling they're like stigmatized as informants or similar.
Yeah, the questions often I hear is that I do not trust the internal IT because they have maybe access to some sensitive data. And this is exactly what I want to avoid. I want to avoid that my IT people have also just only in theory a chance to get access to that, and I want to avoid that they have access to that, and based on that I cannot use an email-based system. And therefore it's necessary for such cases to use a software for that, a black box more or less, which is accessible from everywhere around the world. Because we are always talking just only about our employees, but of course we have maybe vendors or maybe competitors, yeah?
Sure.
They want suppliers, whatever. And based on that, they need a secure system.
Yeah, and how would it work actually? I mean, would it be like simply a normal website which is then over like the internal system?
It is an external provided website, it's a very secure website. And therefore the only data flow from the internal IT to the website is completely encrypted. We are talking about an end-to-end encryption in the end, and therefore no single chance to get access to that. And this is the most important thing from the IT perspective.
Yeah, which then also comes, of course, to the legal perspective from a GDPR perspective, of course. Data security on the one hand and confidentiality of the data on the other hand, yes.
But as a fun fact, on the other side, if there is a support case and the user calls the IT, the internal IT, there is no chance to help the user. And therefore you have to get in touch with your provider of the software.
I think what we have forgotten is one of the major stakeholder group. It's the management, because the management has to fulfill legal requirements, has to implement and put those kind of systems in place, of course. Then the management has also the chance to get information earlier than it gets normally, or get information which normally would not be addressed to the management because people are afraid to contact them directly. And at the end, the management should also set up a kind of whistleblowing system which is designed to the compliance code and the code of conduct of the firm. And if you fulfill the legal requirements and get this chance and design a system which reflects the organization, I think then it's a perfect setup for all of the stakeholders.
Exactly. As an additional information, you also have the chance to get information from your subsidiaries of the company or maybe from some offices far away from your headquarters.
So yeah, very good point. But maybe also to think about is more importantly, how do we actually implement that and how does it work? I mean, you have to have the managers on board.
I would say I would go one step back, and I think technical solutions should be explained or discussed with Helmut. But what I find is that the organizational setup is much more important than the technical solution, because you have to try that all stakeholders are on the same page, that they're working in the same direction, So employees should be informed. They should. You should also give employees the chance to participate and to contribute in the design of the system. The management has to be engaged quite heavily to put such an implementation and such an organizational change through the organization. Also, the supervisory board has to support this. And if you have a workers' council in place, I think it's a very, very important topic that also the workers' council has a say in this project, because otherwise it could be blocked. And what's the most important thing is to do the right communication. So you have to, I think you have to over-communicate on that topic, because a lot of people are afraid of a whistleblowing system because they don't know exactly the background and they feel that it's a threat to themselves personally. And if you communicate in the right way, I think a project is working out very well.
From the technical perspective, it must be easy to implement in the sense of that I do not want to take care about it, because due to the fact that the software or the system is provided by an external provider and everything is encrypted and everything runs in a web browser, as an IT, I'm not involved in that. It's very good to be not involved, because otherwise I would have to think about where do I have to store the documents coming via email in a secure way and so on. And as long as everything is protected inside this kind of black box, I'm fine with that. And therefore the efforts to implement this from the IT perspective is a minimum.
Yeah, and here we have then also like coming together what you said and you, Gernot, that the managers have to, drive it through, and that goes obviously then through policies. So you have to have like all the various policies in place. From a legal perspective, you have to actually instruct the employees to follow that. You have to have a code of conduct saying explicitly what can be subject to this, to a report via the hotline, what has to be reported there, and that makes also sense, just simply to implement it and to live that in practice, simply because then the employee can use it again and will use it, and employees and as well, of course, like supplier, vendors, and business partners. Yeah, and then we come back to the fact that all sides in the company have to work together to remind the employees of how to use the tool and to have regular trainings, basically.
And from the technical point of view, I told you already that I do not want to take care about that. Therefore, the operating of the system is not part of the internal IT. But on the other hand, to maintain such a system regarding especially the processes, what do you think, Gernot? How much effort do you have to invest?
I mean, you have an initial effort if you're setting up such a project, but it's really limited from out of our experience. Also with huge clients, it takes 1 or 2 days of attention of the management and of legal department, and you implement those kind of systems, I would say, within 4 weeks. The only thing which lasts longer is the communication and I would say the inclusion of all stakeholder groups. But daily maintenance after going live, I would say, is going to zero from my point of view.
Yeah, I believe so too. Exactly. At the beginning also you have to draft all the legal frameworks around it. Of course, have possibly, if you have a works council, involve them as well, have them as well on board. Data protection policies, and then it's only the compliance with the requirements from the directive, and maybe once the implementation law as well.
Exactly. I think we've covered now all the questions we had. But Gernot, do you want to summarize it?
Yeah, it's not rocket science. You have to commit all stakeholders. You have to find the right tool. You have to avoid patronage in those kind of projects, and communication, of course.
Exactly.
That's the topic.
The most important thing is communication and communication.